And it's Newswatch Oklahoma. Glad you're with us on Monday, as we have been doing for 2 years. Glad you're with us. Got a good stream lined up for you tonight. We've got two guests that need no introduction at the top of the show. My friends, Keith Beal, the Senior VP of Government Affairs and Public Policy with the Petroleum Marketing Institute, and one of the principals of Cornerstone Government Affairs, Mark Yates, who represents the Advanced Power Alliance. And you heard right. It's like the musical Oklahoma. The rancher and the cowman should be friends. Well, in Oklahoma, the petroleum folks, the molecules, and the electron folks, the wind and battery, they're getting together on something we're going to tell you about. It's kind of historic to see the organizations working together. They always are for Oklahoma. We're going to get to an issue whether they're united and talk about that. Bottom of the hour, we'll be talking to Storme Jones, who's going to talk about this Oceans 14, we want to call it, Project Ocean, that was sort of unveiled today. The company, it's the worst kept secret in America. It's Panasonic trying to build a battery factory up in mid-America. And because they work with Canoe and they work with Tesla. And, you know, Elon's got a situation going on south of us. And also our jail update. There's been a couple of major developments in that. And, you know, generally speaking, their media goes hot and cold on that issue. 72 days to that election. And so we'll be taking a moment for that. So got a lot coming up this evening. If you have to go someplace else, remember, we're on, it's YouTube, Facebook, all the News 9, News on 6, Twitter, Amazon Fire Stick, Apple TV, all of these platforms. It's always great to have you go wherever. And we replay this endlessly, as you know, all during the week. Let me bring in Mark Yates and Keith Beal, two guys who know quite a bit about state government in the state of Oklahoma. Good to have you guys on both this evening. Thanks for sharing your Monday nights with me.
Thank you, Scott.
It's good to see you both. I'm just taking, as I was saying right off the top, it's not always been, it's the worst kept secret that, you know, for some years, the renewables industry and the petroleum industry had differences. And it seems like in a lot of ways that we're moving forward. I have to tell folks, if you didn't get to see the governor's presser today about this situation, it's going to be this Panasonic situation, they still can't. Some of our leaders under non-disclosure agreements, they can't say anything about who it is, but it's the worst kept secret in the world. It's Panasonic. And as the vice president once said, it's a big bleeping deal. So not the current vice president, of course. But he goes on to begin the press conference talking about, and I think the first question in the presser was, but what about oil and gas in the future in Oklahoma? And he really did a great job setting the stage about how we're kind of on all the above. We are on all the above and a model for the rest of the country. Let me start with you, Keith. First, thanks for joining us. Tell us a little bit about Petroleum, your industry, because the names have changed over the years. Yeah. And there once was two, now there's one. So just give our listeners and viewers an idea about the organization you represent.
Well, the first rule is you never want to correct the host, but it is the Petroleum Alliance of Oklahoma. And we
notice I cut the marketers. I see Vance McSpadden in my mind there. So apologies. It's a new name for me.
We love the marketers. But the Petroleum Alliance of Oklahoma, which I have the privilege of working for, represents group all sizes, small, medium, and large companies in the upstream, midstream, and downstream phase of oil and gas. So that's all the way from what people perceive as oil and gas is like Devon and Chesapeake and Continental, all the way down to Valero and everybody in between. So that's the Petroleum Alliance of Oklahoma, and we represent the entire oil and gas industry on its behalf at the Capitol and with local communities when needed and where needed.
And you're the folks that make the molecules that come out of the ground, which we need, the world needs. By the way, feel free to correct, because that was just the first of many mistakes I'll make tonight. It happens all the time. It gets worse. The grayer their hair, the worse it gets for me. Our other guest this evening, Mark Yates, who's a principal with Cornerstone Government Affairs, and you're representing the Power Alliance. Tell our viewers who they are.
Sure. Well, first of all, I appreciate you having us on the show, Scott. The Advanced Power Alliance is a regional trade association which I've worked with closely for the better part of nearly 5 years. But basically 45 member companies of that trade association that are energy companies spread across the United States, but they're developing utility scale wind, solar, energy storage technologies, and have deployed. Those companies have invested over $25 billion in the state of Oklahoma. And we've seen obviously a large growth of the wind industry over the past 20 years. But those companies are investing in renewables, and we see it as playing a complementary role to Keith and the companies that he represents in moving us forward as an energy state.
And it's a great industries in our state. We lead the way, and that's wonderful. And this issue is something that this program and some of our News 9 and some of our live streams have been doing about the situation dealing with pipelines, renewables in different counties. And back in October, I had Representative Pfeiffer, who's one of the group of really great legislators who are trying to take care of this problem, which involves, I would say, disputes of valuation. And it has a lot to do with maybe just a few folks setting the stages. It's very complicated. I'm going to have both the guys talk about this. But Representative Pfeiffer is one of these folks that's been working really hard on this, trying to get something done. And I'm going to have a comment from him, but this was something back in October. But Mark, let me start with you. If you could just kind of set the stage, and there's been a flurry of stories the last few days. We started talking about this. There was was it last summer that there were some interim hearings about this, or in the fall?
Yes, in September.
Wasn't a lot of coverage, but it's a big issue, and it has a lot to do with education. So a lot of the stories I've been reading lately I'm not sure they're telling the whole story. I'm not sure that they're not objective. It's just like there's so many moving parts to this. So for people that are at home watching this or on their phone, whatever they're doing, tell us why this is an important issue, why that the energy producers in our state are on the other side from county assessors, and what this all boils down to and what can be fixed.
Well, it's a good question, and I'll try to simplify it as much as possible. But, and I'm not going to speak for Keith, but I think at the end of the day, it doesn't take long when you drive around counties in Oklahoma and you realize that energy energy companies are investing as heavily and as much as anybody else in the state. We are an energy state, and in many of our rural counties, these are some of the largest investments that those counties see. In particular, I'll speak to wind. We've invested as an industry over 33 counties, $25 billion. These are very, very large facilities. And we have a unique situation in Oklahoma in which we have 77 elected county officials and the county assessors that are tasked by the taxpayers to place value on energy assets and other assets, whether that's homes or hotels or farm equipment, you name it. But in the case of energy, these counties are contracting with third-party appraisers to arrive at value on energy assets, whether it's wind farm or it's a pipeline. And in particular, we have one company that controls 47 of our 77 counties. That company is contracting, and there's just a fundamental difference in the approach to value at arriving at value for a wind farm or a pipeline. And so we have an inordinate amount of property tax protest, in which has created instability for everyone involved. And that's not only just for the energy companies, that's for the counties, that's for the local school districts. And so for the better part of the last 3 to 4 years, we've been working at the Capitol to find what is a solution to make this issue better. Because certainly at the core of it, when you have school districts that are budgeting and the amount of money that's being held up in escrow upon protest, that's an issue for those school superintendents and for those schools as they're looking at their budget. And so, as companies, we're trying to look at, what is the problem? Is this unique to Oklahoma? Because obviously we have assets in Texas and New Mexico and Kansas and other states surrounding, and we don't have this issue. And so it begs the question of why is this taking place at the rate that it is in Oklahoma? And so there's a lot to unpack, but that's kind of the genesis and the oversimplified version of what's going on, Scott.
And Keith, I mean, there's hardly a county that your folks are not involved in, have been supporting schools, football teams, glee clubs, FFA, 4-H. I mean, it really is interesting that this has happened, but I don't see that, Keith, in other states. I mean, we're surrounded by other states. I don't see this sort of a problem. And I don't read where that you have kind of a monopoly of valuations from one company. Before I get asked the question, let me play this bite from last fall, because we've been covering this for quite a while. And I ask for your answer, Mark, I asked Representative Pfeiffer, is having one group doing all these valuations around the state a problem? Here's what he said.
I think it makes it extremely difficult. And I think part of the problem with this whole thing is some third-party consultants. So county assessors have the ability, again, we talked about not being able to know everything about everything. So through statute, they have the ability to go in and hire people to help them set values. What we've seen is one company really being the ones that most everybody uses, especially in some of these high protest areas, which have a lot of oil and gas and wind valuations in them. The basic premise was pretty simple, right? They'd come in and they'd go to a county assessor and they say, we can help you raise more money because we can find things in your county. At that time, it was mainly pipelines. We know you've got pipelines that aren't getting reported. They're not paying their taxes on them. So we can come through and we can, sign a contract with us. We can help you find these assets, place values on them, and raise your valuations and overall raise your revenues and go to your schools and go to your counties. That's where it started. Then after a while, there was no more assets to find because we found them. And a lot of the stuff has gotten a lot easier because of technology. Because we now have access to geotagging, we have access to aerial maps, things like that that we haven't had in the past. So technology and being able to help county assessors better use that is what the intention of the law was. Where we've seen it's almost to the point now where it's a battle of personalities, which is something that's never good when you're trying to set policy. But that's kind of where it's got to, because you have one main county contractor that has gotten crossways with a lot of these companies.
It just, what Representative Pfeiffer said in October begs this question. If it's easier for these assessors with the technology they have to do the correct valuations, and why the heck are they hiring one company, Keith? It just, to me, that's the sort of thing that in these stories that I've been reading recently, I don't see much about that. And for heaven's sakes, what I've seen about, there's a story right now about a vendor with some restaurants and some state parks. It's like above the fold front page every single day. This one seems to be buried, Keith.
Yeah, the whole thing is a little perplexing to me. Not only does this one person involved in the beginning part of the process, he also does the education for the assessors. And then he's involved in, so he has the first touch with the assessors and their staffs when they're getting trained. So he's able to pitch his services, maybe not, at the class. And then he's able to evaluate the property, set the property value, and then he's involved in the appeal process. So he's involved in the beginning and the end, the whole way through the process. So, sort of like Mark was talking about, in the oil and gas industry, we do not see this kind of activity in the other in the surrounding states. So I think as a state, as a policy group, we need to look at ourselves and ask ourselves, why are we having all these protests? Why are these companies protesting only in Oklahoma, but they're not protesting in Texas? They're not protesting in New Mexico or Kansas or Colorado. So I think that's the main thing as a group of policymakers. We need to ask ourselves, why is this one person allowed to be involved in the beginning, the middle, and the end?
I'm interested in that. It's a great answer, which begs another question. Why is this happening? There's been, the stories I've read this week, the assessors have had a lot of profile in this regard. And Keith, you've been around the block. You know the executive branch, the legislative branch, Congress. But one of the things I see in all this legislation that's working through the legislature, I don't see anybody saying I'm against it. When I was out there, which was 18 jillion years ago, Mark, we had this thing called loving a bill to death, right? Oh, I'm for that old deal. And you just love it and love it and love it. And it doesn't get passed. Do you think that of all the things that are happening out there, that all the negotiations are going on with all the parties in good faith, or is there maybe some effort to love some of these things to death, so to speak?
You're asking me first?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Well, look, I think that first of all, let me just say that I think our legislature has been tasked with a difficult issue to tackle, right? I mean, at the end of the day, there's pressures locally, there's pressures from obviously energy companies, none of us want to be talking about this, right? Property tax protests. It's not good for anyone. So they're in a difficult situation. I think that everyone that has been involved from a stakeholder standpoint would agree that there's not necessarily a quote silver bullet to this issue. But I do think that, you know, Representative Pfeiffer and others at the Capitol have made good faith efforts in putting forth policy recommendations that I think bring us closer to solving this issue. And several of those in terms of additional training for county assessors. You know, again, here we are talking about energy assets. We know that we're a legacy oil and gas state. These assets are not unique and new. Wind, for that fact, is now 20 plus years old. And so at some point it begs the question, you know, at what point should we expect those that are elected to place value on property? Why would they not be equipped and trained to be able to do this and not outsource that function to a third party? And I think that's an important question for our policymakers at the Capitol. There's other initiatives and policies that are also being proposed. I know Representative Pfeiffer has talked about trying to expedite basically all of the cases that are in appeal, creating a court of tax review. But at the end of the day, between, you know, Keith's companies and the companies that I represent, we've all been at the table. We participated in the interim study in September and have collaborated and been supportive of the policies being put forth. But we're starting to see, as you've seen kind of in the media recently, with the county assessors wanting to pull back some of the layers and the teeth of the policies that have been proposed. To Keith's point about the one individual that's in control of so many counties, trying to take the third-party assessor out of the informal and formal protest, the appeals process, is a part of the policy that we've been discussing, and there's now being pushback for that. And it begs the question, why is that? We're utilizing taxpayer dollars to outsource the role of the county assessor, but yet we're not held to account to defend the numbers that third-party assessor is putting forth. And so there's a lot of ongoing conversations, but we've been at the table and continue to try to collaborate and work towards a solution, even though it's not a single bill solution.
Keith, there is the possibility in some of this legislation to move this valuation aspect to the Oklahoma Tax Commission. And I just look at it this way, just a dumb country boy. All right, so the assessors are saying we don't have the wherewithal to the expertise to do this, so we're going to hire a third party person to do this, which creates all this chaos. Oklahoma Tax Commission has all the ability to do this. Isn't that the simple answer to get this all done? Is to let the people who know what they're doing, who don't have to outsource this, who don't have to bring on controversial figures to do this, to let the OTC do it?
That is one of the recommendations that we have made to the legislature. You know, not just Representative Pfeiffer, but Representative Dick Lowe and Senator Montgomery have all been doing a great job. I mean, I think we look at the good. We had the interim study, which was going to lead to some policy, and we have the policy out there, and everyone's talking about it. So that's the good. The bad now is that you know, and it's their right to, but the lobbyists, I mean, the assessors have begun to come to the Capitol and lobby their legislators. And so we just need to do a better job of educating the legislators on what we think would be best, you know, for their local schools and their local counties as we move forward. Because I think that's something that, you know, we need to do a better job of explaining, sort of like Mark did, you know, explaining how much money the schools get from oil and gas, how much money they get from the land, and doing a better job of educating that. Because I think sometimes people hear protest and they just assume no one's doing anything. So we just need to do a better job of educating. And, you know, comes down to economic development, Scott. You know, companies, whether it's wind or oil and gas, you know, we can make investments other places. We don't have to do it here. We can do it in the Panhandle of Texas. We can do it in the Permian. We can do it in North Dakota. So, you know, oil and gas investment is not stagnant to Oklahoma. So I think we need to, you know, let our legislators know that and remind them that, which they do a great job of assisting us when we ask. But, you know, this also comes down to an economic development part, sort of like you started off the show talking about the governor's press conference. So our companies can make investment choices every day. And this is just one thing that could be negatively impacting those decisions.
Yeah, because molecules to electrons. It's what's going to continue to rule the world. There's great things out there for our state. And Keith, let me start with you. And Mark, this is the same question because Keith has already alluded to it. What is the next step in terms of what we've got 6 weeks left? And we know that those folks don't want to go home and campaign. So we probably don't have 6 weeks left. So what's the path forward? What are we looking for the next few weeks to break this log jam and finally get something done?
What we're looking at right now is probably these bills will go to conference. We'll be together talking about education, the role of third-party assessors, the role of the tax commission, if we decide to do the court of tax review. So I know that sounds like a lot, but these are issues that we've been talking with them a lot about. So it's nothing new. So I think it's just about, what we can get done to show progress moving forward. This might not be a 1-year solution. It could be a 2-3-year solution. So we just need to, do what we can this year to make the process better for everyone out in the counties and local government, and then, kind of see where the dust settles and, make a crack at it again next year. But what the viewers can do is they can, contact their legislators at the Capitol and, ask them these very basic questions. Why is one person allowed to basically dictate policy for county assessors when the county assessors are duly elected? And we're not trying to take anything away from the county's assessors. They do a great job. So I think the main question is, why is one person allowed to be involved in the beginning, the middle, and the end?
Pretty good question. Mark, where you see the path?
Well, I'm hopeful, right? I think there is some good faith policy discussions that are ongoing at the Capitol, and we do hope to see progress made. And I agree with Keith. I don't think it's all going to get corrected this year, but I also think we have to continue to talk about the status quo and how that's not okay. At the end of the day, this is a unique issue to Oklahoma, and we have to solve it because, as I said at the top of the show, it's not good for any of the stakeholders involved: the counties, the schools, the companies. And so we have to correct this issue. And so hopefully we're going to see more and more folks talking about how to correct what we have going. The system itself is flawed, but I am hopeful that there are going to be some policy solutions moving forward that we make progress on, because it is imperative. Because Keith hit the nail on the head. Companies do have a choice, and at the end of the day, when companies invest hundreds of millions of dollars into Oklahoma, then to be found out that, look, all we're looking is for fair market valuation, and to be held up in litigation over and over and over at the behest of basically one company controlling a process. That's not good for anyone involved, and it's not good for Oklahoma. So hopefully we'll find some solutions moving forward.
I appreciate you guys. Keith Beal with the Petroleum Alliance of Oklahoma. I got it right that time, the senior VP there. And Mark Yates, principal with Cornerstone Public Affairs. And I think it's great. I'm glad the media is starting to look at this, try to get into the details. It's very complicated for people like me because it involves numbers. But nonetheless, it doesn't take long when you see the media eating one story alive, which deals with a sole source sort of contract, and something like this, which is going virtually unnoticed. For the most part, most of the stories we've done on this issue that's been what's been talked about. Every time John Piper's been on here, he's talked about this, and it doesn't seem to resonate, but maybe it will. That's something that needs to come into focus, especially when you've got the OTC over there, which seems to me that's the fix. And as Keith hits it on the head, and why is one person insinuated doing situation and causing what appears to be some chaos? And schools need that money. And by the way, I know Wind Coalition, Petroleum Alliance, you guys love schools. See what you do for schools around the state of Oklahoma. There's even been some insinuation you guys don't like schools. This is nuts. That's crazy talk.
And I'll offer this up to you, Scott. All you have to do is go back and watch the recorded video of the September interim study, in which the third-party assessor involved in this, he made the statement publicly, and he has done before in other meetings as well, is that, there's 3 approaches to value. There's the cost approach, the income approach, and the comparison to sales. But I prefer the 4th approach, which is I have a number, you have a number, and let's meet in the middle. And ultimately, that is the root problem that we see taking place in Oklahoma. And we have to challenge that. Otherwise, we're not going to get to where we need to be.
Yeah, that's how you do used cars. That's not exactly the way to go about doing those sorts of things. Well, I think it's great for you guys. Any last thoughts, Mark, Bill, Keith?
Well, just real fast, since we talked about money to education, in 2021, the oil and gas industry provided $204 million directly to education and local ad valorem taxes. In 2020, which is the last year available, which was a bad oil and gas year from COVID, was 410 million. So I think those are interesting numbers to get out there in the public domain. Just one industry doing one thing for education and local government.
Well, my thanks to Mark Yates, Keith Beal, and Mark Beal, whoever he is. Thanks for making an appearance tonight. So you see, Keith, I told you it wouldn't be the first time tonight. So
I
Mark
didn't
Yates,
that time though.
I'm so glad that you're with us. And hey, Keith, I'll be back more. And same way with you, Mark. This is an issue. We get into the witching hour of May. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of changes, but it's an important issue. We've been working on it for at least 6 months. We've been doing videos and streams about this. So appreciate what you guys are doing, and let us know if some developments and we need to get out to the folks.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you both. Have a great evening, guys.
You too.
Okay, coming up, we've got Storme Jones. But as we talked to you before and about this Panasonic situation, we've said we'll just keep on having updates when we start dealing with this June 28 jail bond issue. And so we have a short interview this evening. There was a couple of developments that have happened in the situation dealing with the jail bond, some endorsements. Here's my 5 minutes with Commissioner Mon. 72 days to the primary election, which will have that Oklahoma County jail bond issue in it. Commissioner Brian Mon joining us once again. Commissioner, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me on, Scott.
Okay, so we promised folks every time we do one of these streams, we're going to have some sort of update. 72 days since the last time we talked, been about a week and a half whenever the commissioners put that bond issue going forward. There has been some news. Haven't heard much about it in the mainstream media, but there is news for people who are interested in this project.
Yeah, I'm proud to announce that the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber last Thursday, actually formally by their board of directors, voted to approve endorsing this proposition, and then also committed to working on the campaign. And so what the viewers may not know is that you cannot use taxpayer money for any form of an advocacy campaign or politics. So while we as policy setters, as the Board of County Commissioners, can set out to call for the election, we then have to depend on raising money privately in order to advocate for the campaign. And so I'm really excited. The vote was unanimous, which I think is a huge testament to the commitment of our civic and philanthropic and corporate world, all joining together, because there's a good mixture of all of them on that board of directors. And I was excited too that they indicated that they'll run a campaign of Fix the Jail. That's the theme of the campaign. And so it is easy to understand. This is what all, of course, the community knows we need to address. And we have just about improved a lot of things like education. Obviously, the economy is roaring. Our real estate is really hot right now. We've got jobs coming in. But the one kind of blemish in our armor right now is the fact that we got an issue with public safety. We have got to fix this jail so that we can incarcerate those that need to be, and then right size those that are, being brought in that maybe don't need incarceration, but rather mental health. And so we can obviously, at the same time that we're building a jail, get a mental health facility, maybe even if it's not on campus, but in conjunction with this, so that we can go to the root cause of the problem and then keep these individuals from maybe having the recidivism rates that we've seen so far.
Okay, so not to confuse folks, but it's not fix this jail. We're talking about a new facility here.
That's right. It's the jail problem. And we have had this thing now for 32 years. And, even in its original oral history accounts, it was only designed for 25 or 30 years. So even if it had been used in the best possible way over the past 3 decades, which we all know it wasn't, then it would even be nearing the end of its shelf life. So it's time to do it. I'm excited that the chamber saw that. We're seeing a number of the mayors throughout Oklahoma County step forward and endorse this bond also. I think that's also rare when you're looking at a local proposition. There's sometimes turf wars where other communities are worried about, well, this is going to probably inhibit our ability to pass our bond or a sales tax proposal that we have coming up. Instead, I think universally they're recognizing that this is a paramount need and that our community as a whole needs to get behind it.
Saturday on Hot Seat on News 9, Jeff Dismich with Oklahoma Department of Mental Health Substance Abuse Services. I asked him directly, can you do what needs to be done going forward with the building that's there now? He said, one word answer, no, can't be done. So ODMH, for example, their spokesman, their communications director, do you know of any, what I would call recognized organizations that will be opposing this besides the occasional folks who have just a problem with building a jail in general? So I understand the opposition to that, but in terms of opposition being organized, funded, and the sort of opposition people would listen to legitimately, do you know of any?
I don't. I think that's probably not the biggest known culprit that we could face in this campaign. It's rather apathy, cutting through the noise. Was there 14 candidates that filed for the open U.S. Senate seat being vacated by Senator Inhofe? There's just so many distractions. Now, the county commissioners brought this forward to place on this same ballot because we wanted to be transparent. A lot of times, Scott, they look for these obscure ballot elections that virtually nobody's intending to go vote. There's nothing out there. There's hardly any media attention because there's nothing else really of prominence on the ballot. We could have tried that. We could have been on the April 5th ballot. Collectively, we wanted to step forward and go with what I think probably will be the highest voter turnout primary ballot we've ever had in state history, given what's shaping up on filing day last week. But I think that that's a testament to how confident we feel about this proposal that we brought forward. And that, if it is included in any kind of a formal opposition campaign, they too are going to have to really work to get the masses out, because this isn't going to be just about delivering a few more on a low turnout ballot. We really want the whole community to weigh in on this and decide whether we're going to take the jail and rebuild it, or if we're going to stay in this condition that we've been in for the past 3 decades.
All right, 72 days. Commissioner, thanks for bringing us up to date. We will continue to do that all the way to this election, this jail bond election in June, and appreciate you helping us out, keeping people informed.
Thank you for helping us with our countdown for justice. I appreciate you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so that's a little earlier today. So some local mayors, the Chamber of Commerce, which is a big deal, have endorsed this. They were not going to do this unless they were happy with the proposal. So that's just the bottom line. 72 days, we will continue. As developments happen, we're going to be passing them along on our streams. All right, the big story today, in just a moment, introduce you to Storme Jones, who needs no introduction, by the way. He went to the Gaylord School of Journalism at the University of Oklahoma. He's backstage so he can hear everything that I'm saying. So today, the governor has a presser. We were referencing that earlier with Keith Beal and Mark Yates and what he was saying about energy. And it's become the worst kept secret in town about this Panasonic plant, which already does work with Tesla, is doing work with Canoe. Kansas has passed a $1.3 billion package of incentives to get them there. Well, let's just set the stage right now. The way to do that is for me to play you the 6 p.m. Storme Jones report today on News 9.
Yeah, the one catch is the governor says he's under a non-disclosure agreement and can't reveal who the company is, although it's widely believed to be Japanese-based Panasonic.
We can't talk about the specific job numbers yet. It's thousands of jobs and it's billions of dollars of investment.
The governor urging lawmakers to approve 3 different types of tax breaks. The cost still a question mark.
Yeah, we have an idea, but there's still some negotiations going on with the company, and I'm not at liberty. I'm still under an NDA. I can't say the exact amount of money that they're planning on building their factory for. But whatever the number is, it's billions of dollars.
Kansas has reportedly offered Panasonic, a major maker of electric vehicle batteries, a $1.2 billion package. Stitt says the Oklahoma offer will be competitive.
What makes these numbers large is this is the largest factory investment in the state's history and one of the largest in the country. So that's what makes numbers bigger. But the percentage-wise is not that much different than any other company that might be moving here with 100 jobs.
He says the investment could have a ripple effect touching 70,000 jobs across the state. The governor says the deal is on the 1 yard line.
I would not be standing up here asking for this in front of the press unless we thought we had a pretty good shot. But I'll tell you this, if I don't get it passed, it's not happening.
And the governor telling lawmakers he wants that deal done by the end of this week because he says the company is on a deadline. At the state capitol, I'm Oklahoma's own Storme Jones.
And boom, just like that.
Hey,
Hang on just a second here. All right, so I'm in one of these situations where that I've had to learn to deal because I was at the Bud Hebert Journalism School at the University of Oklahoma, which is around the turn of the century.
right.
President Teddy Roosevelt was president at that time. And, about a year ago, a young man well, who you actually mentored into a, gazillion trophies over my shoulder out at EOC. And when he was at Luther, came in and said, Dad, I'm going back to university. It's like, great. He stood there for a little bit and he said, there's one more thing. And I said, no. And that's right. Joey Mitchell is at Oklahoma State University. So what I see now is I'm getting that same sort of feeling. I see my friend Storme Jones, who went to the Gaylord College at the University of Oklahoma with that shirt on.
Did you see, by the way, Gaylord ranked number 2 for journalism colleges in the country last week?
I did not see that.
Yeah, big deal. Broadcast Education Association ranked us number 2 behind Arizona State. Huge accomplishment for the school. No, Scott, I need to do laundry, frankly.
Okay.
I still have one shirt though in the closet for our friends up north.
Okay, just want to make sure. And by the way, so I do want to say this. The governor kept saying NDA for the folks that got their education at the University of Texas. That stands for non-disclosure agreement.
That's right.
So,
And non-disclosure agreement covers really good things and really bad things.
okay, so I don't know how much of this. I do know that there were these surreptitious flights going to a city. I'm pretty sure it's New York City. I think that's where Panasonic is headquartered. I know people were trying to see, looking at flight apps to see if certain planes left a certain. They did a really great job, the governor and the state officials, in keeping the lid on this for a while. But when you see Canoe and you see what happened to Tesla and you see who builds their batteries, it didn't take long to figure out it was Panasonic. It's kind of by deduction, right? That Panasonic is the company. And then I don't know who asked the question today. Where's it going to be? It's going to be up by Tulsa, right? Well, it's going to be in Pryor.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Was
Well,
that your question?
It was, and it's one you kind of have to ask, I think, because folks, around the newsroom and this part of say, well, why isn't this over here? Well, the governor basically says, look, we show them the entire state, but this is the place where people want to be right now with the Grand River Dam Authority. We've got hydrogen stuff starting to be developed up there. A lot of these plants, like the Northern Data was announced a couple weeks ago, require massive amounts of energy. And they called the Mid-America Industrial Park, shovel-ready site. They are used to turning things quick, and you can sign a deal and be digging in the ground the next day. So this is another project up in that area. I asked the governor today, will it be hard to pitch, those maybe more fiscally conservative folks in Western Oklahoma that don't want to give up this money to a private business? And his response or their pitch is no, that basically a rising tide lifts all ships, to where you increase tax revenue. It's going to go to the schools in Western Oklahoma. It's going to go to the roads and bridges in Western Oklahoma, and that it all kind of levels out in the end. So yeah, another project up there. But this story that you aired, Scott, aired at 5:00 actually. And we know that the JCAB meeting at 4:30 had a little bit different package from what the governor had endorsed at his press conference. It kind of lays out, gives us a little bit more idea of what, some of these companies that would qualify, what the qualifications would be, and then maybe a little bit on how they would fund it. The funding I saw, discussed carrying over about $700 million from the previous fiscal year. We know that's still short of the Kansas 1.2 or 3 billion that they offered. So, it'll be interesting to see the final version of that, I guess, and what all the money's added to the pot, where it all shakes out.
And you've got Canoe, which would use those batteries more than likely, based on information I have. So there's some home field advantage right now. We've already spent some time pitching the Tesla thing.
Yeah.
Knows where that. I mean, who knows what color the world is that Elon Musk wakes up? But I mean, they are obviously doing stuff. By the way, this weekend there was a Wall Street Journal article. I tweeted it out this morning. I thought maybe that the name Panasonic would pop out today, and that maybe we were going to blow them away at the offer. As you said, it's not quite what the Kansas deal is, but it was the was it Canoe's vice president or another one of these EV CEOs saying, look, the aspect of what we've seen with the computer chip thing, he goes, that's just an appetizer about what the shortage of these batteries is going to be like over the next 2 decades.
Yeah.
2 decades. So saying, if you're used to the news about these chip shortages, this is the big deal. I mean, battery power, that's the holy grail in terms of everything, right? I mean, that's the holy grail.
60 Minutes yesterday actually had 2 stories, one on electric vehicles. Volkswagen is wants the majority of their fleet to be electric by a certain day. And by the way, Volkswagen also looking to Austin, so it wouldn't be too far to travel there. And the second story on 60 Minutes last night was about aviation and electric powered airplanes. So I mean, it just stands to reason that if that's the way the transportation industry is heading, then the components to that's going to be just as valuable as we've held oil and gas maybe for a long time. Now, obviously, the question is where the electric comes from. That electric doesn't just come from the sky as electric. You've got to burn coal or nuclear energy or something further down the line.
I think Gov even got a pitch for coal today. Did you watch that in the presser? He was
talking about just sustainability or not working in certain situations.
Yeah. Okay, so I retract my statements. Only the third screw up tonight. No, this will be the fourth. But anyway, it was Rivian's CEO, RJ Scaringe, warning the auto industry could soon face a shortage of battery supplies for electric vehicles, a challenge that he says could surpass the current computer chip shortage. Okay, so here's the bottom line. If you get one of these suckers here, right? Out in the country in Oklahoma, if you throw a couple of things out in the bar ditch, in a week you have a dump, right? So we're going to do this backwards. Okay, it's the redneck reverse redneck, where we get Panasonic in, and next thing you know, there's several more chip makers. I actually thought in the early days that this Project Ocean might be about microchips, because all that money was coming down from the infrastructure bill. And I was telling people, see if they're making trips to Utah, where Micron is headquartered. But apparently it's Panasonic. I know it because I read it with Storm Jones. Okay, so people may not be used to this, but a bill, I always get this kick. And this is one of my fun ones, when reporters, present company excluded, will stand up and go, well, the bill is dead now for this session. I'm like, oh, man.
No.
No, nothing is ever dead out there. And it's not just cub reporters. It's older people that will say, the bill didn't get out of deadlines. Okay.
Deadlines give you a good idea.
Right.
It's not dead until sine die.
It's aspirational. Nothing is dead. And things can be introduced 18th day of April. Yep. So having settled that, we'll never have to talk about that again. 2 appropriations committee, were it appropriations or rev and tax where this was introduced today?
I think they're appropriations. JCAB.
JCAB. Okay. Joint Committee on Appropriations and Budget. Okay. That's the money guys. This means Thompson and Hilbert and Wallace and all these. That's where all the seniors are. Okay. All the experienced folks. And so they both introduced their bill today. And you mentioned there was a slight difference. It's my understanding the sparks are already flying between the legislative branch and the governor's office about that early today.
I don't quite understand, as a viewer, a consumer of all this information, how that's not hammered out. The governor has a press conference at 1:00. JCAB starts at 4:30. And the governor was asked today, a reporter said, Governor, there's no lawmakers standing up here with you. Why not? And he said, I didn't invite them. So it just seems like this is a big stage where you'd want some unity. And I'm not sure, you probably have more insight on the discussion behind the scenes on the differences and why they would air their, proposals that aren't in lockstep.
Because it takes personality. I mean, it's what happens is election year, late in the session. Tempers get, people's skin gets a little thinner, doesn't it, Storm?
Oh yeah. They haven't, they're there's kind of, we're getting towards the end of the session and not too many sparks have been flying yet.
I know.
But we've already, after the school voucher stuff was over, we're sitting here looking at the end of session going, geez, the budget looks good. They're going to pass some more anti-abortion bills, I'm sure, which leadership and, both chambers are all on board with. But here we go. We've got some sparks on this, apparently. What was the substance of their disagreement, I guess?
I just think how you're terming things and the numbers. I think that boils right down to it. And let's face it, when you start dealing with something like that, you've got to get legislative leadership happy on a situation like that.
Yeah.
They, and as I've pointed out in the past, anytime that the governor, with all due respect to everybody I'm about to mention, anytime the governor, anytime the pro tem, anytime the speaker in the room, the governor has the bigger job, but he's been there less than the other two. Okay. They've been around the block more than the governor has. And here's another thing and this is a sign of a great team player. This is my estimation from the people that I talk to. And I'm like you, I talk to a lot of people. I think this shows what an incredible person we have as Commerce Secretary. This Mr. Mueller is a rock star. He's a rock star. And the state of Oklahoma nobody has any idea about how lucky we are to have him. He's a Goldman Sachs guy. Okay.
Yeah.
And they rule the world.
Yeah.
He's a rock star. It's the third time I've said it. I say it again. This is an incredible person to be giving their time and talent to the state of Oklahoma. This would not be happening without this guy.
No, I believe that. I traveled down to Mexico with the governor and Secretary Mueller when they were courting some folks. Well, they got a Mexican consulate, an agreement for a Mexican consulate. But they went to Mexico City and then, oh goodness, I'm going to forget the name of the industrial capital of Mexico. Slipping me. Anyway, I was surprised.
It's starting early, Storme.
It'll come. But I was shocked. They were up, the meeting starting at 7 a.m. and they were, in the lobby haggling until midnight. He's a very hardworking man. And then I guess the proof's in the pudding. So if you're able to land Panasonic, it's hard to imagine, the governor pitched it today as the largest manufacturing deal in state history. The proof will be in the pudding on that one if this comes to fruition, just, how big of an asset he is or has been to the state, I guess.
I'll tell you that we've got one more rock star. You know this well. And so their names stay out of this. There's no possible way that Ken Wagner's not involved in this, our energy secretary.
Yep.
Another incredible person. Look, you can't, I know right now the governor's catching some heat over some other appointments. You don't hit 100% on nothing. Major league rosters are out 24, 25 people. Half of them are gone by mid-season, right? You're going to have some rock stars. You're going to have some duds. It's just all, but this is a super deal. I just don't think until today that the majority of Oklahomans have any idea how big this thing would be.
Well, and today's announcement, unfortunately, I guess, is, under the veil of the NDA. And so you kind of have to read through the lines and people like, oh, that's spooky. And that's weird. I think it's probably quite standard practice. And then once we're able to come out and the governor is able to say Panasonic on TV and how big the investment is, I think maybe, the story will continue to evolve. The timeline on this, I think at this point is pretty darn quick. I think Panasonic's board of directors is set to vote maybe early next week from the national reporting I've read on this today, to where that announcement could be pretty quick. But today's announcement, there'll be flack, I guess, for the secrecy around it. That I think from folks I've talked with is kind of part of the process on these major, publicly traded companies. But all of that will come out in time. And if it is as big of a deal as, we're thinking, if they do choose Oklahoma over Kansas, like I said, the proof will be in the pudding. It'll be a pretty big deal. Hard to criticize, I think. The incentives are things that will always be criticized, I imagine. But a lot of them, the ones that I read today, are fashioned in a rebate. So it's not like there's any cash up front that are going to these folks. They're getting money back or off what they already spent, invested in the state. So.
We used to have a lot of flack over incentives, and I think about a guy you don't hear on this particular issue a lot, but I remember a few years ago when a guy named then State Representative Jason Dunnington who's leading lawmakers around the country, like to Atlanta and to Los Angeles, this thing called the movie rebates. And then remember, there were people, Caltech said, no, it's not a good deal. And look what's happening. Okay. And it's going to be a while. Okay. I mean, the Californians have quit buying homes in Atlanta. Why? Because in Atlanta, it's all homegrown in the movie deal now. It's going to be a lot of Californians here now. But that incentive has been working, and it's in the form of a rebate. And let me ask you a couple of final questions. So JCAB today, could we see floor action on these bills as early as, say, Wednesday?
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, absolutely. That's the timeline, I think. And the governor said today, we heard in that story that we ran, and said he wants this on his desk by the end of the week. So I think that's a very reasonable, I guess, timeline. I mean, folks will always push for more transparency, say it's unreasonable to be pushing this through. But I'm telling you, looking at the calendar, yeah, we could definitely see floor action Wednesday.
Well, you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. And there are going to be some people. But, when you go after something like this, I mean, Dubai would want something like this.
Yeah, this will be international news whenever there's an agreement on this $4 billion plan.
And a person like Kevin Stitt running for governor.
Well, and also something you don't want to vote against. I was looking at the breakdown, and I think in Senate JCAB is along party lines. House JCAB had a few Democrats voted for, including some Democrat representatives from Tulsa. So in an election year, I think a $4 billion investment is probably something that you want to have your name associated with.
100 miles an hour. And then, by the way, get used to another term. You'll hear it. We'll suspend the rules.
Oh,
You'll hear
yeah.
that a bunch next
We already
2-3 days.
have. And I thought once about keeping a tally through the session. It'd be impossible to, how many times these rules get suspended, but happens a lot.
It happens a lot. And this is interesting for, I think, the new generation of journalists like you, which is, this story is as much a Wall Street Journal, CNBC, Fox Business, Bloomberg sort of story as his political story. In fact, it's a bigger finance story than it is a political story. It's kind of like inflation. You learn more from reading the Wall Street Journal or Barron's than you do than Politico, for example. I mean, it's just, this is that intersection of business and politics. And it's interesting. I'm not sure that, guys like you are able to do both. When you take just a purely financial reporter or just a purely political reporter, sometimes some of the details are left out. This is a hybrid story.
No, it definitely is. And then you put that on top of being, our format's obviously television. I was reading a non-doc article this evening that was excellent and is able to flesh out more of the incentives and what it looks like. And I guess kind of behind the curtain on reporting some of this is like, we kind of want to give viewers a bottom line of, this is how many folks are looking to employ. Here's what the final price tag is going to be. But the nitty gritty details, which there is a massive amount of nitty gritty. Yeah. In this type of deal, often are better, most always fleshed out better in print publications or online publications. There's something else I was going to add, but I forgot what it was.
Was it about, were you going to talk about Trey Savage? As I was about to.
Go ahead. Great article on Non-Doc this evening.
Yeah. We see these failures of the business model failing in journalism around the country. It obviously in Oklahoma, people are getting their news in a couple places. One, and here's what the data says: television and Facebook. I mean, that's what the data says. It's not my claim. All right. And you look at Griffin. Well, we're number one in Tulsa. We're number one in Oklahoma City. Have these sorts of streams because of the incredible talents of people like Ryan Welton, who I think is a bot. I don't know if he's real. He's a genius, right? And I look at what's happened with Non-Doc and Trey Savage, who went to the University of Oklahoma, the Gaylord School, that he stood that model. He stood all these models on their head. It's an incredible publication. He's an incredible individual. And they're just doing things that nobody else seems to be doing. If I were in another state, I think the Texas Tribune, and I think of Non-Doc, is two groundbreaking, chaos-creating game changers. And there you are. I mean, Storme Jones, who's one of our most respected journalists in our state's like, okay, Non-Doc was saying, it's an incredible operation.
Well, Trace lives at the Capitol, by the way. I mean, this guy is plugged in as anyone that I know up there and talking to these folks. Just getting ready for my for this conversation this evening. You know, I was Googling around and looking at some local reporting. There are phenomenal journalists working in newspaper in Oklahoma, but they don't have the story up online right now. The readers will get to enjoy it tomorrow morning. But for stuff like this, I mean, you know, the deadline's always now, and folks are wanting this information as soon as it's available. And like I said, nondoc.com, it's on the home screen this evening. And I remember what I was going to tell you. From all this Googling, Scott, I'm getting ads now on my Facebook and Twitter for electric trucks. There's a Chevy electric truck that now all of my ads are for, from Googling all this EV stuff today.
Getting anything from Elon?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Since he's explained a couple of things since Love Me Tender. By the way, I would be remiss if I didn't ask for this generation, your generation's thoughts about what's happening over there. Look, we have colleges that are doing courses on Twitter, and I think Twitter has fallen to, first off, as a stock, it's a terrible place to buy, has been for some time. Number two, while things like Snap and TikTok and all these others have rocketed past it, it's kind of like the blue check crowd just kind of retweets and retweets their stuff, right? I mean, they're in a silo. And in terms of influence on anybody, they're not even in the top 10 anymore. You're just not. And that's what the data says. But I'm interested in the debate, you as a journalist, and I've seen a lot of the retweeting this weekend talking about open records. And, you know, we're just not going to see the legislature open up public records the way that journalism would like. Just not going to happen. Okay.
Sure.
It's windmills you're tilting at, moveon.com. So my question to you is, the discussion today on the business pages was what's going to happen if he gets control, which I don't think he's going to get control of it. And he talks more about free speech, which means the unmoderated sort of free speech, you know, the buildings on fire type of free speech. For your generation, are young journalists and people who are you millennial or are you Gen X?
I am barely Gen X.
Okay. So you're watching at least that discussion about free speech, journalism, and Twitter. Your thoughts about what we should be watching for?
I don't know. I talked to a UCO class about this last week, actually, about how I use social media. And I don't know. I definitely think that, I guess, Twitter is an echo chamber, to say the least, for folks who are more civically engaged on things. I don't know if it's a bad place. No, there's a lot of the things that do well on Twitter often are like divisive. You know, I don't know. I probably have more of a pessimistic view of Twitter than which Facebook. Sadly, Facebook isn't a great alternative. I mean, if I post a picture with my dog Henry, who I love dearly, you know, that'll do great on Facebook. If I post a big piece of journalism that I'm proud of, you know, it'll get 2 likes and maybe my grandma will see it 3 weeks from now on Facebook. Unfortunately, there's not a good alternative. I don't know what about the Elon Musk Twitter consequence. I haven't really followed that much, to be honest with you. Folks like an edit button. That's about all I know.
Yeah.
But yeah, Twitter's an interesting place. For all the praise you're giving to Ryan earlier, our digital content director at Griffin, one thing that I do enjoy is that, you know, I have never had a conversation with him about what to post or how to post on social media. I think everyone kind of has their own brand, their own style. I'm pretty open. You know, I don't mind letting folks know about what I do in my personal life, going to football games, mowing the lawn, building the deck. I'll post that right alongside the stories I'm doing with the governor, clips from high-speed chase, things that I find interesting in my life I share on social media, and that's kind of my only rule of thumb. And frankly, I think it lends more credibility to journalists that, you know, if you can take back the veil just a little bit and, you know, folks can see, hey, Storme, you know, is building a deck. Hey, the gas pump in Storme's truck just hit $100 when he was filling up the tank this weekend. So did mine. You know, we live in the same community. We're facing the same thing. So for me, using social media in involving some of my personal life in that, I think is lends journalist credibility, honestly, and shows the folks that, hey, we're a member of this community like anyone else. We're all rooting for the Sooners Saturday. We're all driving through wicked construction, trying to get downtown. Anyway, that's kind of my take on how I use social media. I don't know what any of that means to larger conversation.
I don't know, but you mentioned a genius, and we need to get him. We need to force him out of his area 51, where he works there at Griffin in Oklahoma City, and have him come out and talk about this sort of stuff. I will tell you, I've had some experience a couple of months ago. I had a colleague of yours on who is in a community that eats Twitter alive, and that's Erica Lee and all her folks that are into NFTs and blockchain discussions. And when Erica Lee signs on, also in Spaces, also in Clubhouse, there's a gazillion people start following, and it's all very upbeat. I can't understand half of what they're saying.
I didn't understand half what you just said.
Yeah, but that's exactly what goes on. I mean, there's these communities to me, that's where you reach people now is, what you want to talk NFTs, you got to go to Twitter. I mean, that's where they're at. And also audio. I mean, for 2 reasons. I think this is going to be the year of audio. 2 reasons. Hey, Alexa. I didn't mean that. Okay, so the story of the week is going to be what you'll be covering the next couple of days. Is this Panasonic, the world's worst secret?
Yeah.
As they try to compete against the state of Kansas. It's just going to be fascinating. And they're going to be some rules broken, Storm. That's my prediction.
Rules amended. Okay.
Okay.
The rules say you can amend the rule. Suspending the rules is in the rules, Scott. Come on.
Okay. All right. That's exactly. That's optimistic. I appreciate it. I mean, you put the right spin on that. It is suspending the rules as within the rules.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're going to see all of that kind of stuff. And I guess by the end of it, we'll see what the final dollar amount is. I mean, I guess that'll be an unveiling at some point as well, because the legislation, I guess, would technically apply to any of the companies that met these qualifications. With hiring 500 people the first year, 1,000, all the way up to 4,000 folks. I mean, theoretically, I guess these packages would apply to other businesses as well. And I guess at some point there'll be a specific offer to Panasonic that we'll get to report on.
It'll be good. Thanks for all you do. Thanks for taking time out, and thanks for everything except for your choice of wardrobe tonight. But for the other half of my house, they all think it's great.
There we go. I probably shouldn't have said Twitter's awful. I'm now thinking of this. I appreciate everyone that I interact with on Twitter. You just have to have a life off Twitter as well.
You sure do. Okay, thanks to all of our guests, and Storm Jones, thanks. We'll be talking to you really soon, and thanks everyone for being here tonight. We'll see you Wednesday night. I'll see you partially because it's Larry Bookman. He's back. The Fab Four is back. That's Wednesday at 7 p.m.
Mask mandates on airplanes. I want to hear, get their thoughts on that.
That'll be the first question.
Big talk.
This is Storm's first question. All right, have a great evening, everyone. Good night, Storm.
We'll see you.